Before we get very far into our next story, we do have a warning for you tonight. What you're about to see and hear may not be suitable for children. Tonight, take a walk in their world.
Transpicuous news, connecting the dots between the lines.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Transpicuous News. It is Sunday, October 18th. And, the week's kind of started off to a rather slow pace, all things considered, for the last little while. Some interesting things came to my attention today, of all things, but you'll have to wait till the very end of the news show to get to those. Yeah, couple of really cool stories. My first one up. McDonald's, baby, going out of business. Can I get a hoorah? Yeah. So, yes, apparently McDonald's franchisees are saying the brand is in a deep depression and is facing its final days. They're basically talking about they've got no leadership, and the corporate head office is basically trying anything that they can come up with is some kind of an idea, the hope that something will stick to get them out of this ginormous hole that they're in. Now, I would like to think that it's because people are finally waking up to the fact that McDonald's is deadly, but I'm more inclined to think that this is a commentary on the economic situation in the United States, in Canada, but in the United States. And when people can't even afford to go to McDonald's, therein is a statement all on its own. So, now this one, I have a feeling that this was meant to be one of those satirical kind of things meant to pigeonhole, the conspiracy theorists, except that everything in this article can be turned around and used in the opposite direction. Scientists, Earth is endangered by a new strain of fact-resistant humans. The study conducted at the University of Minnesota identifies a virulent strain of humans who are virtually immune to any form of verifiable knowledge, leaving scientists at a loss as to how to combat them. These humans appear to have all the faculties necessary to receive and process information, and yet they somehow have developed defenses that, for all intents and purposes, have rendered those faculties totally inactive. Again, I think it was meant to be a slight against the whole, conspiracy theorists, but really, no, you just pointed a big fat finger at yourselves, guys. Nice job. My favorite story of the week. I mean, by far, Hillary Clinton, and yes, I fact-tracked this. This happened. Vanity Fair magazine, article, Hillary Clinton, I'm really not even a human being. She says in the article, in the interview that they're transcribing, you guys are the first to realize that I'm really not even a human being. I was constructed in a garage in Palo Alto a very long time ago. People think, Bill Gates and Steve Jobs, they created. Oh no, I mean a man whose name shall remain nameless created me in his garage. Now, the assumption, of course, is that she's taking the piss. And yet there was a whole lot of people who read this and went, oh, yeah, it explains a lot. Just saying. We've had these discussions before. Just saying. Oh, and in awesome news, Nestle is to be sued for the California drought crimes. Now, of course, we covered this story a couple of times as it has progressed over the last 6 months. Campaign group The Story of Stuff Project has just announced they will be pursuing legal action against Nestle for illegally extracting groundwater in California for its Arrowhead brand, which has been a key contributor to the state's drought crisis, because, of course, we all know their license to extract water expired 27 years ago. So, first of all, the piece that came forward was the fact of, hey, somebody's going to sue Nestle. I'm all on board. The second piece of it, though, the guy who was in charge of the U.S. Forestry, San Bernardino National Forest Department, blah, 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 guy by the name of Zimmerman, while he deliberately for 27 years, or I guess it would have been 22 years, did not do the paperwork, did not follow up as he was supposed to have about this whole Nestle not having any permits. Yeah, in 2005, he took a job with Nestle. Oh, isn't that a shock? No conflict of interest there. Oh, now the other one I just came by on my Facebook literally a few minutes before we went live. There are now over 700 lawsuits against Monsanto. It was a great little meme. I will try and find it again on my Facebook and actually repost it. I don't know if I did post. Yes, I did post it out. So it's on my Facebook feed on my wall. Basically, yeah. Now that it's official that Roundup is a cancer-causing chemical. Oh, yes. Apparently, there's lawyers all over the U.S. going, anyone? Hodgkin's lymphoma? Yeah, come stand over here, PCBC. Yeah, come on, join our little lawsuit. I'm not really into the whole lawsuit type stuff, but hey, if someone else is going to sue someone like Monsanto, yay, I'm all for that too. This is bullshit. Pardon the pun. World's largest waste-to-energy system turns on in Washington, D.C., turns poop into power. Now, first off, when it comes to waste-to-energy systems, I know a fuck of a lot about it because my dad was in the industry for 20 years. So the entire article I read from top to bottom howled my ass off. First of all, DC, I could have got you a cheaper system. Secondly, it would have put out more kilowatt hours. Thirdly, it would have done a hell of a lot more than process your fucking poop. Yes, so since the startup in this September, the system is producing a whole net megawatts of electricity. Yeah, dude, you so got ripped off. I don't care where you bought this system from, so got ripped off. They're way better, bigger, more energy kicking out systems right there in the United States. But, God forbid, you actually bought the U.S. seat of power, actually bought a waste energy system that was made in the United States. Of course not. Don't be ridiculous. Support local economy? Never. Anyways, yeah, it's a cute little article. It's quite hysterical. It's a complete waste of money, and they got hacked. But I digress. Let's move on. Okay. Millions of Americans might need passports to fly domestic flights. Now, this is interesting because there's a little spin to this, of course. Passport needed in 4 states, Louisiana, Minnesota, New Hampshire, and New York. A decade ago, the U.S. government issued stricter standards for state-issued IDs, including driver's licenses, but 4 states have refused to comply. Louisiana, Minnesota, New Hampshire, and New York. So now, if they don't upgrade by 2016, anyone in those states who wants to get on a domestic flight will now need a passport. Yeah, this is a crock of shit. This is called testing. 1, 2, 3, because we covered this, didn't we? Oh, hold on, we skipped one. Remember back in July? When everyone was busy looking at all the false flags, House passes a bill to deny and revoke passports for Americans deemed to have helped terrorist organizations. Of course, there's no actual definition in the bill of what helped terrorist means, what terrorist organization means, and it actually does firmly imply domestic terrorism, which of course has never been defined. So this is actually your setup. This is your setup to basically revoking the right to travel in the United States, unless you have a passport. Oh, but then all they have to do is claim that you're a domestic terrorist and you can't fly anywhere. Interesting how these goes. Oh, we have a few more of these coming up, so keep calm. Here we go. Interesting again. Oh, the customs computers crashed at airports all over the United States. 15th of October. Which ones? Oh, only the biggest airports. What was it? Atlanta, New York, and Los Angeles, and I think it was Chicago. No, Dallas, Fort Worth. But this was an interesting one. It was a problem and outages affecting customs and border protection computers. It was the outages affected the Department of Homeland Security computer system that screens passenger against a terrorist watch list. Huh. That's interesting. Very interesting. Yeah, so, here we go again. Airports closed down, airlines closed down, ticketing agencies closed down. Oh, the computer glitches just keep continuing. And of course, we have to keep rolling with this because some of the ridiculous propaganda right now, the US media and the US government, because let's face it, one and the same, they have come out with some of the most absurd ridiculousness this past week I've ever heard. And we're only going to touch on a couple of things because literally I couldn't even keep track of it all. ISIS is attacking the US energy grid. It's true because some guy heard from another guy who may be a US official, but it's unconfirmed that this is happening. And it's being reported on CNN, so gotta be true. Islamic State is trying to hack American electrical power companies, but they are terrible at it. They're just really poorly trained hackers, apparently. U.S. law enforcement officials revealed the hack attempts on Wednesday at a conference of American energy firms who were meeting about national security concerns. Oh, wait. First off, why was there a conference of American energy firms, i.e. private corporations, meeting about national security concerns? That's my first question. Second of all, but again, there's no specific evidence and no information was cited. It was just, there was a guy who heard from a guy that this is what's happening. Note though, and it's not just Islamic extremists. There is an equal threat from domestic terrorists and hate groups. Wait for it. We're not done yet. We'll get back to this one. Keep it in mind. Here we go. Oh, this week. Oh, sorry. It was last week. I missed this news story. The former United Nations General Assembly president was charged with corruption. Yes, the federal authorities in New York arrested and charged the former president of the United Nations General Assembly and 5 others in an alleged bribery scheme, part of what prosecutors said was a wider probe into corruption in the top ranks of the international body. We will be asking, is bribery business as usual at the UN? Oh, bribery at the United Nations. I can't imagine how that could possibly happen. Come on, guys, please, seriously. Yeah, so anyways, they got arrested. I'm sure there's a backstory, but I really don't care. It's just, UN officials arrested. It's just fun. Now, what's a Transpicuous news without me taking the piss out of NASA? Right? Okay, here we go. Astronomers may have found giant alien megastructures orbiting a star near the Milky Way. Oh, the star identified by the Kepler Space Telescope may harbor structures which could point to an advanced technological civilization. So one, of course, everyone comes out going, oh, look, it's more about disclosure. Yeah, it's more about disclosure. And next thing you know, there was articles all over the place with like pictures like this one, like, ooh, really? Okay. Some speculate this evidence that we've found an alien megastructure orbiting a star. An advanced civilization may want to build a giant solar collector on a star in order to fuel all of their super advanced technological needs. This concept is called the Dyson sphere, theoretically. Interesting. Yeah, nice distraction though. I mean, kept people talking for at least a day and a half. They also released, remember, the other big distraction, NASA released all, 1,500 photos, or 15,000 photos from the Apollo missions landing on the moon. So just keep everyone distracted. So all those people who are totally into UFOs and all that kind of crap, you know that they're all spit with a magnifying glass over every single photo trying to find stuff. However, I loved this one. First ever photo of Apollo 11 landing on the moon. So who took the photo? Just saying. It seems like an honest question. And Pluto. Okay, again, you want to talk about distraction? I mean, Pluto is a planet, it isn't a planet, it's a moon, it's a planetoid. Seriously. Distraction. Pluto reveals a variety of rich colors, stunning the experts. Of course, I liked this one that came out of Britain. Pluto is an active world of spectacular color. NASA reveals the first scientific results from the New Horizon historic flyby of a dwarf planet. Oh, yes. Oh, the first scientific paper. Oh, yes. And they talk about the moon. And oh, it's such a Pluto is so pretty. Lovely texture and color and lovely balance, Okay, does anyone not remember that we've already seen pictures of Pluto? Remember, this was the big deal back in July 15th. Remember the distraction month? Published by the New York Times. This is the picture of Pluto they were so happy to announce to everyone in July. And now we got this beautifully colored, made up one. So I'm just saying, it took them 3.5 months. NASA, kind of along the same lines. I know a lot of graphic artists. They work a hell of a lot faster than that. You may want to contact me. I'm sure I can give you some good references to some guys who could turn out a better product much faster. 3 months, yeah. So this is Pluto. Of course, this was interesting because it took me down a little rabbit hole. Very short little rabbit hole. So this 1996 is what Pluto looked like. In 2005, it looked like this. In 2010, the Hubble telescope took this picture of Pluto, because that doesn't look made up at all. And of course, New Horizons, July 7th, 2015, came up with this one, and it looks like it's even got like the little Pluto dot right there. And I sat there, was like, really? So, I mean, because I have issues with Hubble, well, NASA in general, we all know this. So they got these pictures, this is supposed to be a picture taken by Hubble, and this one, and this one. Oh, and look at this beautiful galaxy. Oh, and this is an incredible photo of a galaxy. And this is Pluto, also taken by Hubble. Bullshit. Right. Try again, folks. Now, the interesting thing was this week, we always like for confirmation, those little pieces that come out of, we all know the truth, but when someone official from one of these official agencies actually comes out and tells us the pieces that we've been trying to tell everyone for like 10 years, it's always nice to get those confirmations. So NASA also announced this week that they're launching tests, that they're going to release colorful vapor tracers into the atmosphere above Earth. Oh, with a mixture of barium and strontium. Oh, what was that? What was that? Can we say chemtrails, everyone? Okay, you can see the lovely picture here of the barium ionized component, which has become elongated along the Earth's magnetic field lines. Whatever, don't care. What's interesting, though, is that they also admitted to, using lithium vapors and trimethyl aluminum in the atmosphere. So to that person who decided to radically unfriend me on Skype because I was just fear-mongering and posting the information last week about lithium being used in chemtrails to drug the population with no proof whatsoever? Yeah, lithium, NASA, in the atmosphere. I rest my case. Ah, yes. Now, the big distraction this week. Biggie, did I go offline or you? Huh. Okay, well, I'm going to keep talking then.
Oh, hang on, you're offline. I put the emergency in.
Oh, fuck.
The
How
sound is
far?
back in.
What was the last slide?
This wasn't it. Go back one.
Oh, wait, wrong way. Chemtrails?
There you go.
Or was it the Hubble
That's
Space Telescope?
the one after the Hubble.
This one.
Yeah.
Okay.
You'll be back live in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. You're back.
I'm back! Apparently we're having internet issues. I can't imagine how that happens. So anyways, I was bitching and moaning about NASA. You guys missed, I was really getting quite dramatic, so I'll try and repeat it, but you know, it never works out the same second time around. So here we are. I published all the information on removing the shackles earlier this week. NASA is admitting to sending up colorful vapor tracers into the atmosphere of Earth, including barium and strontium. Oh, isn't that so exciting? Just like chemtrails in space, kinda. Goes much more than that, but and again, as I said, oh look, here's also NASA admitting to using lithium vapors and aluminum over the Marshall Islands in our atmosphere. So, you know, to the person who had to just radically unfriend me on Skype because I was just pushing fear porn, publishing all this information last or the week before about lithium being used in chemtrails to drug down the population with no proof whatsoever. Yeah, NASA, lithium in the atmosphere, chemtrails. I rest my case. Nice try. So the distraction this week was all about climate change. Oh my God. The articles about climate change this week, vast. As a matter of fact, I actually did an article on removing the shackles called Climate Change Litmus Test, basically talking about, you know, we can use this right now. It really is a basis point of whether people are or are not capable of waking up. Because right now, there is so much mainstream media. I'm not talking alternative. I'm not talking about you got to go find these deep scientific studies and do like massive research, you know, in a university library. I'm talking mainstream media coverage. There is so much ridiculous propaganda that completely contradicts each other every single week, especially this last year. Global warming, global cooling, it's CO2 emissions, it's overpopulation, it's rising sea levels, it's falling sea levels, it's melting Arctic ice, it's Antarctica freezing over. Oh, and now, oh, Antarctica is melting. Oh, God forbid. Right. And of course, we have all the announcements, the fact that the entire solar system is going through climate change. Hence the fact I was wondering if they're going to start taxing the Martians, carbon taxes, right? So, I put together a vast list of links to go with this. If you really want to, you know, educate some people about climate change, this is a great litmus test. Let them see this. Let them read it in the mainstream themselves and go, oh, wait a second, that doesn't compute. Yeah, climate change and some of the most outlandish things came out. New York University professor going to fight climate change with hormone treatments on small children. Yes, I'm interviewed for the Sunrise Weekend Morning Show. Professor Matthew Leo promotes hormone treatments on children when they're small to close their growth plates, thus stunting the child's growth. Because it would help with climate change, because, you know, larger people consume more energy than smaller people. I shit you not, I can't make this up. So, can genetically modified humans fight climate change? Here we go. It goes beyond that. The ultimate application of science to the human condition, for instance, designer babies might be genetically engineered to be smaller as adults that would proportionately reduce their carbon footprint. They would also increase body hair to help keep you warm in the winter and save you on heating oil, and less intelligent, so you wouldn't be so tempted to be greedy and overconsume the Earth's resources. So I just like to welcome you to, you know, genetically modified humans of the future. Which is kind of funny, because when I looked at this, I just kind of went, okay, wait a second. Haven't we already been there before the last ice age? Yeah, pretty sure that didn't work then either. And again, head, table, thud, seriously. And they go on news shows and talk about this shit. So, now there was a couple of other interesting pieces. The climate change thing isn't going over so well for them right now. Can't imagine why. Climate alarmists caught in the largest science scandal in US history. Of course, this wasn't in the mainstream media. Don't be ridiculous. Planned by climate alarmists to have other scientists imprisoned for their global warming skepticism is backfiring horribly, and the chief alarmist is now facing a House investigation into what has been called the largest science scandal in US history, because apparently while the guy was advising the White House all about climate change and global warming, he was also getting paid by companies who would directly benefit from global warming. Yeah, I know. I can't imagine how that could happen that way. Another one, though, this was interesting. Top French meteorologist persecuted for debunking climate hysteria. Out of Europe, France's top meteorologist is blowing the whistle on the hysteria. I love the word hysteria. Surrounding alleged man-made global warming theories, blasting the UN's controversial climate agenda and the corruption of science to serve radical political goals. Come on, you gotta love that. It's smooth, it's lovely, and you sit there and go, yes, we'll have some more of these, please. And there are more. There's a lot of them coming out of the woodwork right now. If you could just get people to actually read. It's hard, I know, but if we could just get them to read, there's a lot of these guys coming out of the woodwork right now going, seriously? You're joking, right? Now this was interesting though, climate change again. A little bit of a twist to it. This past week in South America, there was a major conference. President of Bolivia, Ecuador, and Venezuela agreed to speak for Pachamama, or Mother Earth, and civil society at the 21st century, the 21st United Nations Climate Change Conference in Paris, which is this December. What was kind of interesting was some of the way things were talked about, because they talk about climate change, but they also talk about a few other things. Civil society representatives proposed the creation of an environmental justice court, recognition of indigenous ancestral knowledge, and demanded developed countries should recognize their climate debt as a legal and moral obligation. Suggested technology and know-how to fight climate change should be declared global public assets to ensure all countries have free access to them, and stress the need for a universal declaration of nature's rights. So here's climate change, but here's climate change being tackled in a whole different way. And I'm really looking forward to following this. Cuban Foreign Minister Bruno Rodriguez warned his country won't accept any new agreements that dilutes rich and developed nations' existing obligations. Oh, yes. There's a lot in this article. I would suggest you have a little read, because there's a couple of very interesting things about the ancestral peoples and the indigenous knowledge to be fully recognized at the United Nations. And then, yeah, we had this one. And seriously, I almost speechless on this. Susan Rice blames climate change for the conflict in Syria. Yeah. And this isn't old, this is brand new, October 13th. In her most dramatic speech to date about climate change, National Security Advisor, because what's the National Security Advisor doing talking about climate change? My question, right off the hop. National Security Advisor Susan Rice suggested climate change is partially responsible for the conflict in Syria and represents a looming threat to the entire world. On a national security level, of course, which I thought was so cute. Because, you know, I don't know, seeing, you know, the National Security Advisor speaking from the White House, you know, advocating a propaganda piece that was put out in a comic book in 2011. Oh, isn't that cute when the White House has to resort to comic books to convince people of things? Yeah, because climate change is partially responsible for the crisis in Syria. So we're going to talk about Syria now, because, you know, kind of have to. Some interesting little pieces. I'm not going to go into the he said, she said, because holy crap, the last 2 weeks has been insane. I need to do a new show every single night just to keep everyone on top of the minute to minute. So the highlights of the week were 2 F-16 aircraft violated Syrian airspace and then targeted an electric power plant in Aleppo. 2 F-16 aircrafts belonging to the so-called US-led coalition violated Syrian airspace on Saturday. This would be last Saturday, targeting the infrastructure and destroying 2 power plants in the area to the east of Aleppo city. According to the sources, 2 aircrafts violated the Syrian airspace at 10 a.m. Saturday morning. The source considered the incident a breach of international law. The attack caused power outage in the targeted area, was added by the sources. It was covered in the Russian news, the Iranian news, some of the Middle Eastern news. Funnily enough, no one in the Western media touched this one. Can't imagine why. Now, there was also an interesting interview. This is a piece of the transcription. This was aired on Russian national television with Putin again. Now, apparently he does this a lot. I have one of my Russian friends is actually visiting us at the moment. Hi, Levon. So I always get to sit down with Levon, and as soon as he arrived, going, okay, let's talk about Syria. I want to hear what's going on in Russia. Give me all the goods. So apparently, you know, Putin makes a lot of these speeches, and a lot of the people in Russia take it as typical political propaganda stuff. But it's only kind of been now with the Syria stuff that all of a sudden they're kind of, let's say, waking up to the fact that this isn't like just political posturing rhetoric. He's actually giving the goods and telling people what's actually going on with the US. So I'm just going to cut to the chase here. In part of this interview, Putin is talking. He says, all other countries that have so far taken part in operations in Syria are acting unlawfully because there is no UN Security Council resolution on these operations and no official request from the Syrian authorities. Let me note that when we began our operation, 11 countries were already taking part in one form or another in various strikes against the Syrian territory. This has been going on for more than a year now. Realizing and understanding this situation, we informed our partners of our plans and proposed that we work together. The simplest of all would have been for them, the coalition led by the US, to join our efforts. and in this way bring their own operations on Syrian soil within the law at the same time. After all, if we have a mandate to act from the Syrian authorities, the simplest solution would be for others to join us and work within this same mandate. Unfortunately, we have not been able to reach any such agreement so far with our partners and colleagues, but we do not lose hope that this might yet be possible. So, one big thing I want to point out was kind of missed on a lot of people. In the entire transcript, he never uses the word, doesn't talk about legal, talks about lawful. He doesn't say to bring them under the legal structure. No, he talks about within the law. Legal and lawful, two radically different terms, and I found Putin's use of the word lawful continuously in this speech very interesting. And of course, basically, it was another week, just like the week before, Russia wiped the ass of all the terrorist organizations all over Syria with airstrikes. There is now the Syrian military on the ground making massive push forward, clearing out a huge amount of area, purportedly with Iranian soldiers with them as well on the ground. And another group that I hadn't heard of before has also arrived in Syria. Top Cuban general, key forces in Syria to aid Assad. Apparently, Cuba sent their special forces units in. They went to Russia to get some special training, and then they flew in with the Russians. Now, what's interesting a little more about this, did you know that this isn't the first time that Cuba has come in to defend Syria? They also did so in 1973 when the Yom Kippur War against Israel was on. That's kind of interesting. Very, very interesting. So, Putin had a couple interesting meetings this week, actually. He met with, this made the mainstream, Putin and the Saudi defense minister meet in Russia and agree on common goals in Syria. Russian President Vladimir Putin and the Saudi Arabia's defense minister agreed that Moscow and the Riyadh should pursue common goals in Syria, including national reconciliation and combating terrorism. This is from the Russian Foreign Minister Lavrov. Okay, here's the little interesting twist. Saudi Arabia's foreign minister expressed Riyadh's concerns about the targets of Russia's military operations in Syria. On our part, we expressed readiness, which was met, so this is the response from Lavrov, sorry. On our part, we expressed readiness, which was met with a positive response from the successor to the Crown Prince to begin cooperation with our militaries, blah, 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 don't care. The successor to the Crown Prince. Now, this is a new position that's just been invented recently. I think in the last 5 years that the Crown Prince himself is a named successor. But the fact that the successor for the Crown Prince is making this official visit is very interesting, given the information that's been coming out that perhaps King Salman may have been hospitalized and be completely deranged, which would mean the Crown Prince would be the acting king, which would mean the successor would actually be the Crown Prince. Kind of interesting. Not so publicized was on the exact same day that Putin met with Saudi Arabian ministers. He also met with the Crown Prince of Abu Dhabi, the UAE. And their statements were blah, blah, blah. Yes, so lovely to meet you. Yes, we're going to work lovely together. Blah, blah, blah. Don't care. Saudi and the UAE, royalty, meeting with Putin on the same day. Granted, it was in Sochi at the Formula One. And I know the Saudi royal family is heavily into Formula One racing, but I found it very interesting. And the fact that this one wasn't publicized at all. I actually had to go to the Kremlin's website to find this one. And if you want distractions, because of course, last week we talked about the Iraqis announced the day before, so last Saturday, Iraq Air Force generals had announced that they had done an airstrike and hit the convoy that was carrying the ISIS leader Abadi, not Abadi, sorry, sorry, strike that. Oh, his name's gone right out of my, blah, his name's gone right out of my head. Anyways, the big bad guy from ISIS. And of course, then it was all chucked around. Well, we don't have confirmation if he was killed or not. He was seen being carried out of a vehicle to another vehicle. There's been not another word since then. So this, of course, immediately gets followed this week by White House says ISIS second in command was killed by a U.S. airstrike. Yeah, we're doing, okay, all week the U.S. has been screaming, yeah, we did some airstrikes in Syria and Iraq, yeah, and we took out bad guys. No, why is no one listening to us? Why? How come you're all looking at Russia? Okay, don't know. So they come up with this whole thing. They announced it. Now, they announced this week that they've killed ISIS's second command, was killed by U.S. airstrike, except that he was supposedly killed in August. On the 18th, near Mosul. And it's taken them almost 2 full months to be able to figure out whether or not the guy was dead, or if they'd killed him or not killed him, which was really, really confusing because, back in, there was, the Turk is dead, Al-Qaeda linked terrorist group says the leader has been dead in the Syrian airstrikes. And then it was, oh no, this was September 2014 that Al-Qaeda's leader was destroyed. And then, of course, there was, Al-Qaeda airstrike kills Al-Qaeda leader in Syria, says the Pentagon. But, of course, this is July 22nd, 2015. And then there was another one. There was airstrikes in Iraq and Syria killed the Daesh Al-Qaeda agent and the Daesh leader. This was September 24th of 2000. Or at least we're in the right year this time. So I don't know. Just apparently the U.S. talks about killing all these leaders. And I don't know. I'm more inclined to say, yeah, pics, or it didn't happen because no one believes you anymore. Oh, here we go. Here we go. This was announced today. The Khorasan leader was killed in the Syria airstrike. They confirmed it today. This is apparently the same guy that was, killed back in, no, going the wrong way. Hold on. Yeah, see, was this the one? No, I don't know. Who knows? Does anyone really know when they killed anyone? Because, I mean, bin Laden. Do I need to say anything else? Okay, so go on from here. Remember I said, watch Germany and watch France. 2 little pieces. We had the whole one about the French meteorologist and the climate change thing, which was cute. French government aligns with Russia's war against ISIS. Now, of course, did not make the Western news at all. This came out of the German economic news, of all things. Last Monday, French foreign minister took a surprising stance in favor of Russian airstrikes in Syria. During the interview with French Radio Europe 1, he said that these aerial attacks must be flown not just against ISIS, but against all other groups which can be classified as terroristic. This is very embarrassing for the US and Turkey because Fabius, the French guy, explicitly defined that Al Nusra Front was a target. And Al Nusra Front, a Syrian Al-Qaeda branch, is being fully financed and supported by the US and Turkey. Oh, right out of the German news. Isn't that sweet? Oh, more confirmation. I just love the confirmations when they come in. And in the UK, there's a lot of pissed off people right now about the Saudis because more dirty laundry getting pulled out in Parliament. Apparently, UK targets the Saudis for top defense contracts. The government departments are intensifying efforts to win lucrative public contracts in Saudi Arabia, despite a growing human rights row that has led the Ministry of Justice to pull out of a £6 million £6 million sterling prison contract. The UK has licensed £4 billion sterling of arms sales to the Saudis since the Conservatives came to power in 2010. The UK is now responsible for 36% of all of Saudi's arms imports. Yeah, is this going to be another one like sending the RAF into Syria without Parliament's permission? I think I hear a rumbling. And the Saudis apparently have been taking aiming lessons from the Americans, because this was big news yesterday. Saudi-led strike hits the wrong troops. This is in Yemen. Saudi air coalition targeting Shia Houthi rebels in Yemen mistakenly hit a pro-government position, killing at least 20 soldiers. Oh, but the interesting part is hundreds of Sudanese troops reportedly arrived in the southern port of Aden. And I went, what? Yeah. Confirmed, Saudi Arabia is now importing troops from the Sudan to fight in Yemen. I'm sorry, I have a severe disconnect going on here. What are troops from the Sudan doing in Yemen fighting for the Saudi Arabian coalition? Is anyone else confused? Considering there's a war going on in the Sudan right now? So who's fighting the war in the Sudan? Well, their troops are coming to Yemen to support Saudi Arabia. Or is it that Saudi's having a problem getting their own troops to continue the war? Is that what it is? Their own troops are not fighting so well, so therefore they're having to import troops? I'm just saying. It's just a question. And to further the Saudi stuff, Saudi Arabia warns that rumor mongers on Facebook and Twitter are risking execution. It's true. Because this was awesome, the antimedia.org, they do some really good articles sometimes. Because the plebeians chose to eternally dine at the media's trough of propaganda, the ramblings of a bloated drunkard are all that makes sense after frustration takes hold. People will believe anything. One man's lies are another man's facts. The overwhelming rush of bewilderment clouds any intellectual discourse I could bring to the topic of Saudi Arabia. I've exasperated myself on the subject to manipulated mass of deafened sycophants. Just because the veil is lifted doesn't mean anyone will actually look. That was basically his comments on the fact that, yeah, now Saudi Arabia is threatening to execute anyone who on Facebook or Twitter publicly goes against, the official government standings and statements. Chair of the Human Rights of the United Nations, folks. Let's give them all a hand. So, in further ridiculousness, I told you, Israel, Gaza, Golan Heights is a clusterfuck. It's gotten really, really starting to escalate. Everyone's got to keep a close eye on this. Because of the escalation of violence, because, the Palestinians running around stabbing people, Israel basically passed a law to make it easier for Israelis to get a gun. It's like, oh, never mind them, they're a gun license filling out form thing. Here, just have this gun, go shoot people. I mean, that's not what they said, but that's pretty much what it is. And I'm going to call out RT here. What happened? Boys, did you get pressured a bit? Did you publish something you weren't supposed to? There was a breaking news story on RT. Clash erupts in Bethlehem with live feed video footage and live updates Now, unfortunately, I did not get to it fast enough to be able to get screenshots, but a conversation went on in my Facebook group, and the guys were discussing it about everything that's going on. And basically, the one of the guy talks about, he says, you could clearly hear a guy talking English with an American accent giving out strategic info to the police. I think he was dressed in a different uniform to the other guys as well. They had the green and he was in black. Oh, is Blackwater back in Israel again? Oh, isn't that cute for them? So yeah, I got this about 2 hours after it went live. I went to go to the link. Oh, it's a 404 error. So they cut everything. The live feed was gone. The video footage was gone. All the comments were gone. Everything wiped out as if it never existed. So RT, what did you publish? Who put the pressure on you to pull that down? Because apparently someone did, didn't they? Now, a couple of weeks ago, I said this about Jordan, to keep your eye on Jordan as well. Little interesting things are going on in Jordan that are showing me that there's a serious shift in politics going on. And this week, Jordanians slam Israeli violence against Palestinians and demand to end ties. Thousands of Jordanians protested. Interesting. Like I said, there's just been some very subtle little shifts coming out of Jordan recently. Perhaps they're getting a little tired of the Zionist rhetoric. I don't know. We'll keep an eye on it. And of course, I had to cover this on removing the shackles as well. Doctors Without Borders, Kunduz Hospital in Afghanistan, blown up by the Americans. Okay, so since the morning that the U.S. military deliberately blew up a hospital in Afghanistan, run by Doctors Without Borders, they have changed their story 4 times. The American government changed their story 4 times. They are now admitting to, yes, they did know it was a hospital. Yes, they did know officially that it was a hospital. They knew they were bombing a hospital. The excuse is there was this one guy and they really needed to get him. Yeah. So they killed 22 doctors and patients, purportedly, apparently, to go after this one Pakistani agent. This furthers what I said earlier about the climate change and the litmus test of being able to put the information directly in people's faces and watch what the reaction is. Because this story is so extreme that if people can't see this, refuse to see this, they're never waking up, ever. Here we go. On October 14th, an international panel announced that it was ready to investigate the deadly U.S. hospital bombing, but it would need assurances from Barack Obama and the Afghan president, Ghani, that their governments would comply. The U.S. rejected the initiative for the investigation and instead, on October 15th, sent soldiers to smash up the bombed hospital with a tank, destroying potential evidence for the war crimes investigation. So they had an international panel ready to investigate. The U.S. turned them down, and the very next day sent tanks in to bulldoze the remains of the hospital, thus destroying any remaining evidence that may be there for a war crimes investigation. Now, if the public can't see this for what it is, they're hopeless. Just walk away, because you have no hope of them ever waking up. This is one of those This is so in your face. There is no plausible excuse. There is no deniability anywhere for this entire incident other than mass corruption and war crimes by the American government. So, again, we have a couple of litmus tests. And because, you know, Syria isn't a big enough clusterfuck for the US, they're going to threaten China now. So we touched on this last week with the islands in the South China Sea. China's building islands. US says you can't do that. China says, oh, yes, we fucking can. US says, no, you don't. We're going to come after you. So the US is now threatening. They're going to send an armada. And they're going to get real up close and personal. And China's basically said, yeah, no, you're not. And we will take military action if you come within the national waters, what they perceive as national waters of these new islands that they're creating. So, first of all, I wanted to give everyone a bearing because we've been talking about these stupid islands for freaking eons now. So, China, you have Vietnam coast here. Over here would be Thailand. You have the Supran, Malaysia, Indonesia, and up into the Philippines. This is the Spratly Islands. They're not even islands. Well, kind of. They're kind of like coral reefs, kind of. This is what they looked like. So this is a couple of what the changes are. This is the original island. This is what China has gone in and done with it. Here is another one of the islands, what it looked like originally. And again, this is what China has gone in and purportedly done with. So the US is seriously saber rattling in China, South China Seas over these islands. And China's very firmly said, no, you're not pushing us on this, and we're not playing. We're not going to play any games. If you come, you send your ships, it will be military, and we will respond. So, insanity is as insanity does, isn't it? Interesting, though, in all of this going on, Australia has said, don't look at us, we're staying neutral on this one. So Australia, which is almost always seen as one of the US's sycophant nations, has all of a sudden said, yeah, no, you guys can leave us out of this. We have no statements. We're not getting involved in this little tussle, which is seriously strong words coming out of Australia. But there's an echo going around the world. And this is very much an indicator of that echo. Something else that happened back in the beginning of October, into September technically, the president of Argentina basically accused Obama and his administration of treason at the UN summit in New York City, publicly. Now, again, there is almost no coverage of this. And you can see this came from the Christian Political Party is where I had to go to get the article, but I actually did go and track down the videos. And yeah, she speaks rather strongly against the Americans and what the Americans have been doing. So another nation, another South American nation, speaking out against Obama and the US mafia out of DC. Got a little report. It's only rumor. It's totally unproven. Just a rumor. Senior diplomat with the European Union government allegedly told former NSA intelligence analyst and counterintelligence officer and Daily Beast columnist John Schindler that her government believes that President Barack Obama is quite mentally unwell and inquired about impeachment, an apparent suggestion that his or her government believes Obama is unfit to serve as president and should be removed from office. Just rumor. That's all it is. No proof. Again, it's kind of an interesting indicator, isn't it? There's a lot of that going on at the moment. Countries quietly backing out the door. Quietly, quickly backing away. Now, this was very interesting. I threw it in right at the very end when I came across it. This was in Washington, D.C. on Saturday. On Saturday, Palestinians and Jews demonstrated with supporters at the White House Saturday, decrying escalating violence against Palestinians in East Jerusalem and the occupied territories. They called for an end to U.S. aid to Israel, claiming it funds military equipment used in the violent clashes and repression there. Palestinians and Jews stood shoulder to shoulder, calling the latest response by Israeli Defense Forces to the uprising disproportionate and barbaric. And it goes on to say that, yeah, the Secret Service kind of came along and was like, okay, guys, you need to just go over here, and pushed them away. They weren't allowed to be right in front of the fence of the White House. No, go protest a little quieter on this side street. Interesting. Now, I have a couple of things that I'm going to share with you that came to my attention, let me say. It's been a hell of a week. That came to my attention just before we went live. So, very, very important, because these are notice. You are being told what to expect. First up, the DOJ pivots from ISIS to U.S. anti-government groups with a new position. Washington domestic terror groups from Washington, D.C., domestic terror groups pose a greater threat to America than ISIS or Al-Qaeda, a Justice Department official said. To help combat them, the department has created a new council which will coordinate the investigation and prosecution of anti-government and hate groups. Attorney General John Carlin, who oversees national security at the DOJ, announced the new position, the Domestic Terrorism Council. Following a number of violent attacks or plots against the U.S., he said, were motivated by anti-government views, racism, bigotry, anarchy, and other despicable beliefs. And of course, do you see how it's flowing out? U.S. has lost the war in Syria. They've lost ISIS, they've lost Al-Qaeda, Al-Nusra, all these guys. That's all going down the toilet. But you've got to keep the war on terror going. So now the focus turns inwards. Even more so. We've had the hints. We knew it was all, this was going in this direction. But now they're blatantly telling you. And of course, there is no definition of what domestic terrorism is, no definition for anti-government, what that means, no definitions of what these other despicable beliefs are. More Americans have died at the hands of domestic terror than the international terror groups that federal law enforcement focus on so much attention on, Carlin said, pointing to such high-profile attacks as the racially motivated Charleston church shooting in June. Right? You gotta have the backup. You have to have something to point at to give you a reason of why you have a racism problem. The fact that it's all made up, like Ferguson, completely made up. Like Baltimore, completely made up. Paid protesters, totally skewed news coverage full of lies and bullshit. But you have to have a reason, don't you? Now, I don't know if I actually have the slide in here. I think it got missed. So I'm just going to talk off the top of my head for a second. It was released on, what website was it? One of the alternative financial blogs, investment blogs. A few days ago, some very old, unused radio stations in the US. One of them is called Collapse, which has not been heard of since 2001. Another one, I can't remember what it was called, which has not been heard of since the 90s. Both went live, I believe it was Thursday, within hours of each other, and were broadcast in code. Now, I went through all the recordings, noted it all down. Nick and I both took a look at it, and basically, unless you've got the cipher, and I passed on to several other people I know who are pretty handy at codes, it's uncrackable unless you've got a cipher or you've got a really good computer system who can sit there and hack away at it for hours. So we don't know what it is. Is it real? Have no way of confirming. Is it somebody ordering a Big Mac, a large fries, and a Diet Coke as a joke in code? We don't know. But given some of the other shit that has come up this week, given the financial news that's been going on, you notice I didn't even get into the financial stuff because it's that fucked up. It would have been an entire show just dealing with that crap. I got word that one of the biggest ETFs out of Japan was shut down on Wednesday due to liquidity issues. This is one of the biggest ETFs in the world. I couldn't corroborate the story. I could not get it. It was inside information that I got. I haven't seen it come out publicly yet. We have a lot of movement militarily in the US, a lot of air movement, helicopters, jets in various areas flying different patterns that are unusual enough for the local people to take note and start going, what's going on? So there's something going on. There's something going on. Otherwise, I keep saying, keep your eyes peeled, keep your eye on the ball, and be prepared. Now, next story. Last one for the night. This is major notice. Mind hack scientists use magnets to change attitudes on immigration and religion. Researchers from the University of York have used magnetic energy to suppress humans' threat response functions and dramatically change people's attitudes to immigration. Psychologists use magnets for safety to safely shut down the region of the brain associated with the threat response functions, and conducted a series of tests where volunteers were asked questions about their beliefs. Now, interesting, because they picked religion, i.e. something that's a lot of people, if you're religious, it's a very powerful thing. Volunteers were then asked to think about death, after which they were asked questions about their religious belief and attitudes on immigration. Researchers from the University of York and the University of California, UCLA, hold on, discovered that those frontal cortex was temporarily shut down, reported a 32.8% less belief in God, angels, or heaven. A lot of data in this article. It's on RT right now. I suggest you go read this. We decided to remind people of death because previous research has shown that people turn to religion for comfort in the face of death. As expected, we found that when we experimentally turned down the posterior medial front cortex, people were less inclined to reach for the comforting religious ideas despite having been reminded of death. When we disrupted the brain region that usually helps detect and respond to threats, We saw less negative, less ideological motivation reaction to the critical author and his opinions. UCLA's Dr. Colin Holbrook, who was the lead author on the report, said the findings were striking. These findings are very striking and consistent with the idea that brain mechanisms that evolve for relatively basic threat response functions are repurposed to also produce ideological reactions. Article talks about the response of the brain to magnetic and electric stimuli. Lead author is from UCLA. Do you want to know what else UCLA just happens to have? Oh, high energy particle collider. Right, you know, like CERN, that uses massive magnets that warps the magnetic fields around our planet. Coincidence? Yeah, I don't think so. That article is noticed. Interestingly enough, oh, guess what? Article, and I actually, first off, I want to say, timing is everything. I always say, look at the timing on these things. When I saw this article, I assumed it was the exact same article that we looked at back in May. Exact same picture, almost the identical heading, setup, everything. As a matter of fact, the article, when taken apart and dissected, is almost word for word the exact same article that we read back in May. Scientists at the Large Hadron Collider hope to make contact with a parallel universe in days. The LHC atom smasher at the CERN Center in Geneva, Switzerland will be fired up to its highest energy levels ever in a bid to detect or even create miniature black holes. If successfully completed, new universes will be revealed, rewriting not only the physics books but the philosophy books as well. It is even possible that gravity from our own universe may leak into this parallel universe. The model predicts that black holes may form at high levels of at least 9.5 TeV in 6 dimensions and 11.9 TeV in 10 dimensions. They're currently running at 6.5. I've seen them touch 7. Several times they've touched 7. And we've watched very closely over the last 2 months. They're cycling up, cycling up, cycling up. And there's been a bunch of very interesting tests going on this week using very few bunches and some very interesting readings on the graphs. And now we have notice that within a week, the Large Hadron Collider could open a door to a parallel universe. With everything else going around about this coming week, I find it interesting timing. You know me, I always pay attention to timing. It's interesting. So that is the end of the news for tonight. Blatant plug, our Oddware shop by Lisa and Danny. Moi. I've got some new t-shirts in the shop that I made up this week. I was in a bit of a cranky mood. So I don't know if you want to maybe have something to say. Check out our shop at oddware.spreadshirt.com. Yeah, I had a lot of fun this week, and I actually think that over the next couple of weeks, there's going to be a bunch of new t-shirts coming out in the shop. Oh, and well, here we go. CCN, Network Support Fund, the Oddware shop, 1/3 of everything we make goes to support CCN. So you can buy a t-shirt and support CCN. But 2016 is coming up fast. And there's no budget yet to run CCN for 2016. Well, hell, there's not even a budget to run the frickin' monthly stuff, but we're working on it. So please, if you can, support CCN. You want me to keep coming to you live? I need a venue. There you go, guys. Totally selfish of me, I know. And that is the end of Transpicuous News for tonight. I'm going to mention the new Facebook group, the Unfuckers Unite group that we've got running with some pretty fucking awesome conversations going on in that room. If you would like to be at it, you need to send me a friend request on Facebook at Danny Arnold McKinney and a message, because I forget really easily. Tomorrow night on the round table discussion, it's going to be Lisa and I. We may have a guest. It's hard to tell because we've decided we're not announcing anything in advance anymore. So basically just show up and you'll get to find out what we're talking about. And that's it for me. I will see you tomorrow night on the round table, and I'll see you next Sunday on Transpicuous News. Bye, guys.
Transpicuous News, connecting the dots between the lines.